So Hans, this was the beginning of your life, your first years, and this was actually witnessing a Germany that lost a war, a Germany that had to march into a democratic government, which was very hard to do, and there was...
The inflation began.
Yeah, and then we ran into the inflation, which was also a very novel experience that was made all over the Western world. You remember any?
And finally you had to pay 4 billion marks to get $1. 4.2 billion marks to get $1.
And how could you collect so much money?
Well, every morning before 11, you had to go to your shop and buy, because at 11 o'clock, through the radio or telephone, came the new course. And all of a sudden, after 11, your money was not that much, only that much.
Yeah, Hans, you must explain to people who have never lived through an inflation what it meant. People who used to be paid once a week or once a month, even only for what they had done, now had to line up somewhere to be paid every day.
Yeah.
And that's since the inflation
And
marched along.
Paid
so far.
every day before 11 and and spend this money as much as possible before 11, because after 11 was not that much money, it was only that much.
And you remember that as a child you saw all
sure,
these people lining up in front of the bakery, the butcher shop, whatever, in order to make sure to get at least a little bit for their money.
And the money usually printed on both sides of the paper, yeah? Then later on that became too expensive. They had to pay new money, had to print new money. Finally, the money was printed only on one side. The back side of the money was white.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I was born in 1921, so I was much too small to realize in what ditch we were. So there were a few guys who actually made a big money out of the inflation. They quickly grasped their chance to buy and sell and buy. And but your grandfather was not as smart as these guys to make money of the situation. He did not try to get real estate, property or houses, whatever. He sold the houses that he had owned. And
that was my grandfather on the island of Sylt.
Yeah. And the island of Sylt is to the northwest of Berlin.
Yeah.
And this is where you went practically every summer together with your brother and your sister, because your mother...
Since my father died so early that he was only 2 years professor before he died, so his pension was very small, much too small for my mother to pay in order to let me and my brother and sister and herself alive. And that in order to be able to hold us alive, she went very early in the spring to the island of Sylt and looked around which hotels were still free. And then she would rent one hotel. And as soon as she had rented this hotel early in the spring, she wrote to the people who the year before came to live in my mother's hotel. She would let us, this year my hotel is that and that in this and this street. And so the people who last year were in this hotel came on the other hotel. and not only the guests, also the maids and boys who served.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so you were at that time in elementary school, and you could easily be excused for the summer months to go with your mother.
Yeah.
And you have a few photos of the beach, and it's very funny to look at the way the men took their baths and the way the wives went swimming. They were to separate places, and they covered as much of their, or uncovered as much of their body as was considered decent, and they looked very, very funny in their bathing clothes. Well, what happened politically in Germany? What happened politically in Germany, meanwhile? Where actually there was a young party growing with the myth of Germany who could have won the war.
After 1930 especially, we had sometimes 3 and 4 different governments in one year, because the Germans did not understand what democracy is. As soon as the government made one mistake, it had to step down. So sometimes we had 2 or 3 governments, in 1 month only. And so on the long last, that was not possible to have. And so.
And of course, by that time, you were a young man who was very critical of these events, and you were politically very interested.
Yeah,
and it all happened
I was a leader
in the same place
of
where you
radical
went to school.
democratic youth.
And so you were the leader of this young political unit.
Yeah.
What was the name of the Radical Democrats?
Radical democrat. Radical does not mean extreme. It means going down to the radix, to the Wurzel. Was heißt Wurzel of English? To the roots.
Root, yeah. Hans, this happened in 1933 that you took over the leadership. That was not a very good time to do it.
No.
When at the same time there was elected as Chancellor a guy called
On the
Adolf Hitler.
30th of January 1933, Adolf Hitler became not the emperor and not the king, but the leader and the uppermost commander of the armed forces, der Führer und Oberbefehlshaber der Wehrmacht. Heil Hitler! We had to greet.
Heil Hitler was to be used as a greeting, a welcome, whether you were in private situations or in official situations. And you
But whenever I was greeted
had to
with Heil
lift your
Hitler, I
right
wanted to
arm.
answer, Heil du ihn doch, wenn du meinst, dass krank ist.
So, was Hitler in favor of your party, or what happened? Was there a variation of parties still
Well,
available? Whom you could-
finally, in the radical democratic youth, the young people will still remain in this organization. They were all Jews, because they, little Jews, boys of 15, 16, 17, so on, had no way where to go, and they wanted to do some sporting or so on. So they came to my organization, and I still remember standing there looking at them, and all the faces were young Jewish boys.
Do
and
you
then
say,
they disappeared. I said to myself, as long as I could, well, they are no longer interested, but they disappeared of another reason.
well, Hans, I think,
But I could have done, and I did. I sent quite a number of Jews out of Germany when it still was time.
but Hans, you could not do much for them after you had become yourself in your function as. But you became yourself suspicious to the secret police. So after they had really recognized that there was a guy called Hans Dolezale who kept on with his political activities, they were closely surveying you, and at one day they decided that they just had to make sure that you could not continue freely with your political activity. So, do you remember what happened then?
Well, they came to my apartment where I lived with my mother. My father did not live anymore at this time, of course, and they said to my mother, bring the biggest suitcase you have. And then she went through our whole house, and wherever they found something which may be used against me or maybe not, they put it in the suitcase. And then the suitcase was finally closed after they went through the whole house up to the uppermost under the roof. And they said to my mother that every day at 12 o'clock she had to come to the police presidium in the center of Berlin and bring me something to eat, because they had now so many prisoners there that they could not nourish them anymore. They must be nourished by the relatives. And my mother had enough to eat, so she brought me every day 2 portions, one for me and one for somebody else who did not have a mother anymore.
So, would you like to talk about...
And the funny thing is that when after the war, I wanted to find in the police presidential, which was now no longer Nazis, of course, they were now Democrats, I would find some writing down on my face. They had destroyed everything. My name never was in the files of the police presidium.
So would you like to go back to talk in detail about what it was like to stay for a week as a prisoner in this headquarters of the police?
Yeah, half under the earth. But that was not so bad, because we were still not judged, we were just investigated. And to be an investigated prisoner, they treated you fairly good, because they knew it may very well be that the investigation turns so out that they let you go, and then you could tell on the street and so on and at home how it was. So the treatment was not too bad.
Hans, would you like to make now a stop? Would you like to continue in the afternoon?
Maybe not now, no.
Yeah.
Can you stop it?
Yes, we can certainly stop it.